Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are back on the 2013 Subaru BRZ Premium. In today's video, we're addressing that horrible noise coming over our left shoulder in the form of a bad wheel hub bearing assembly. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into this repair. So guys, first things first, we want to get the car jacked up and properly supported on jack stands. Then we're going to go ahead and remove our rear wheel. Once we got the rear wheel out of the way, we might as well go ahead and remove our 32mm CV axle nut. And throw that in the trash. Looks like someone reused it. They're one-time use only, guys. I'm gonna check to make sure our CV axle is free. It is free from the hub. Now what we need to do is get our brake components out of the way, our brake caliper bracket, loosen up our brake hose, and remove our rear rotor. So first off, we have a 12mm headed bolt over here that holds our brake hose to our knuckle here. Just take that loose so we have some slack in our brake hose. Then we're going to reach back here and we're going to take loose these should be 14mm headed bolts for the brake caliper bracket. There's one. And two. Get those two bolts out of there, then our brake caliper, our brake pads, and our bracket will swing out. Looks like we got almost brand new brake pads on the rear. That's very nice to see. We'll go ahead and hook that there, and we will hook it over here, as we do not want to hang our brake caliper by that brake hose and put tension on it. Now we just pull off our brake rotor. And now we've got access to our wheel bearing hub assembly, which is very stiff, very hard to turn by hand, and it was making a very loud noise going down the highway. So now we've got four 14mm headed bolts on the back side here that we can reach through and take loose once those come out. This should just pop right out of here. Before we go ahead and take that wheel bearing hub assembly out though, we do want to remove our ABS wheel speed sensor. 10mm headed bolt straight on top. Pop that out like so, and then wiggle your ABS wheel speed sensor out of that spindle. Just like so. Don't want to risk messing up that ABS wheel speed sensor when we pop the hub out of the spindle. That's one hub assembly bolt out. That's two hub assembly bolts out. Three hub assembly bolts out. And four hub assembly bolts out. Now our hub assembly should just come right out of there. We might have to give it a little bit of a smack with a hammer, but shouldn't be too stuck in there. Put the hub shocker on it. I guess you Rust Belt boys are laughing at me now that I finally got a stuck one, huh? But old Hub Shocker always wins. We got her out of there. Yeah, we got a little bit of crusty crust in there, don't we? Looks like our bearing is still stuck in our backing plate. Let's see if we can wallop it out without it tearing up that backing plate too much. All right, guys, so a little bit of liquid wrench and a torch got that out of there. And yeah, good and well boogered. Hopefully you can hear that on the mic. Bad, 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 bad. So let's go ahead and get this back together before it totally pours down rain on us. It's already drizzling. Part number is 28473FL020. Our nice new beauty. Go ahead and set that in the backing plate, line up our axle, and shove that back in the bore. Just like so. Now we can throw the 4 14mm headed bolts back in from the back side. Now, of course, if you are unfortunate enough to live in somewhere with wintry weather and salt and corrosive additives are put on the road, of course you want to clear out any corrosion inside of the spindle bore where that wheel hub bearing assembly sits. A little bit of anti-seize would be good, a coating of oil, anything like that to help, you know, next time you need to break it free. Luckily, this car being transplanted from Kansas here to South Carolina, it shouldn't be a problem anymore, and there was very minimal buildup in there. So hit it with a wire wheel after I got that knocked out, and that should suffice for my area. So we just want to get those started by hand, run them in till they're snug, and then we'll torque them to specification. That's much better. All right, now that we got that back squared up, we can go ahead and torque our 4 14mm headed bolts back there to 65 Newton meters. 65 Newton meter set on the torque wrench. And all 4 of the hub bolts are torqued to specification. Now we can go ahead and ram that axle back through and install a new axle nut. We're just going to tighten it down by hand for now, as we do have to torque this to 190 Newton meters. We'll check our parking brake components, make sure our parking brake shoes, all the springs, everything is in place. Nothing got tweaked while we were moving the backing plate. or the hub bearing assembly. Once we know that is good, we can go ahead and come back in with our brake rotor. Yeah, it did drizzle rain, so we got some flash rusting on this rotor here. So once the rotor's back on there, check the clearance between the rotor and the backing plate. While you were beating and banging that wheel bearing out, you might have tweaked it a little bit and caused it to come in contact with it. And when it rubs, it's going to make a noise and it's going to aggravate you, and you're going to have to take all this back apart again. So you might as well check it now before you get it back together. Just make sure that the backing plate is not contacting that brake rotor. All right, once that is done, now you can bring your brake caliper and brake caliper bracket, swing it back over and put it in place and reattach it with the 2 bolts. Go ahead and pop that back into place. Put your 2 bolts through, and those are torqued to 66 Newton meters. And our brake caliper is torqued back to spec. Now we can bring our ABS wheel speed sensor back in and slide it back down in the bore and re-secure it with our little 10mm headed bolt. Just snug it up. For those curious, I believe the torque spec is like 10 Newton meters, something like that. I'll put it on the screen. And now all we gotta do is put our 12mm brake line hold down bolt back into place and tighten it down. And just like so. And we are good, other than torquing down our CV axle nut, which we absolutely cannot forget. We'll go ahead and set our parking brake. Hopefully that's enough to hold this force, and we will torque it to 190 Newton meters. 190 Newton meters is set on the torque wrench. And we're bang on the money. Now all we gotta do is take a hammer and a chisel or a punch and stake that nut into the notch in the CV axle. And just like so, we stake the nut to the axle where it will not back out. It's just what they do instead of using a cotter pin on these now. So now all we got to do is put our wheel and tire back on and torque our lug nuts to specification. All right, now we torque our lug nuts to 120 Newton meters. And that's it, we're all done. All we gotta do is jack the car up, take the jack stands out from under it, lower it down, and go for our drive. We are done. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you all in the next one. And now we can hear, after replacing the wheel bearing, that it's nice and quiet inside the cabin. No more roaring noise.